Hey, there we go. Oh my gosh, look at your
I
hair.
know. Don't I look clean cut?
Wow, look at you. You look younger.
I know. I look a lot younger. What do you think?
I like
Was it a good idea to cut my
it.
hair?
2 thumbs up.
Cool. So sorry about the technical difficulties. All right. So we are talking about the healing power of psychedelics. And you are going to be the person that we're going to talk to with this. So welcome to Conscious Living with Kent and Neyda. And what would you call conscious living?
Conscious living is living in the awareness. We're trying to live in the awareness as much as possible, which awareness is translates to mindfulness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And as far as psychedelics and the healing power of psychedelics, how is that going to play into conscious living?
Because psychedelics help you look at yourself inwardly. And when you look at yourself inwardly, then that's when you start to become an observer. And that's where the consciousness comes around.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have a fun conversation. So let's start by talking about how psychedelics came about. I mean, they've been around for millennia, right? They've been used in sacred rituals for in pretty much every
Yep.
culture, right? Wouldn't you say?
Every single culture there, it's written in scripture, it's written everywhere.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And then how would you say that? How would you say that it it was modernized and came into our awareness in the last 100 years?
You know, it's funny because I think it comes in waves. I think in the 60s, in the hippies, they started coming out with the psychedelics, whether you had acid, LSD, psilocybin. Out of that experimentation, other drugs came along, or not, maybe other plant medicines or other methods. I don't want to use drug per se because that can sound derogatory. So, but I'll just say other alternative methods. And then it got shut down by the government because it got a little bit too scary for them.
Mm-hmm.
For what purpose at that time? I don't know. I didn't delve into the history of that, but I did delve into the history of the plant medicine as it was used in ancient civilizations.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting kind of shift that happened because it's been used in sacred civilizations for what was it used for?
For healing,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
healing and being connected with oneness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, it's funny because I believe it was in the 50s that LSD was actually, that's the one that was really popularized and has the stigma that we hear so much about, that it was accidentally discovered in the 50s in a lab.
Yeah.
Someone got it on their hands. I don't know if you heard about
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
I don't remember if it was LSD or if it was acid. I knew it was one of the two. They're very close, but I wasn't sure which one it was.
Oh, okay. So are they different?
I think so. I mean, they're both hallucinogenics or
Okay.
hallucinogens, but they're different. They're composed differently chemically.
Yeah, yeah. So all right, let's talk about the different perspectives that you and I have. I'm sober and I've been sober for 2.5 decades, and I have never done psychedelics. And you are, and we're both spiritually minded people. I have been involved in spirituality because I realized that the the pain and the suffering that I've experienced has come from my mind. And more than anything, it's the belief in my ego as being solid. And so much of what I defend and what I'm trying to uphold when I'm hard on myself is this feeling of me. And through meditation, I have found that this self doesn't exist, that it's just an illusion, and that awareness that you talk about, that's always and already okay, that's prior to thinking, is actually who I am. I'm not this story that I'm telling myself over and over again. So that's why, we call this conscious living with Kent and Neyda. Now, what is so intriguing to me is that psychedelics, where you could have an experience that you have to work up to for years and years with meditation, you're pretty much guaranteed you're going to have with the classic psychedelics. And would you say that's true? That's
You know, it's hard to say, because just because you meditate all the time doesn't mean that you're paying attention to what the messages are in the meditations and that you're actively working on the path that the meditations teach you. You know what I'm
okay.
saying? Some people may use meditations just as a way of just to calm down,
Hmm.
but not necessarily to look intrinsically. Although that is a natural byproduct, they may choose to ignore that.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's important to just back up for a second and talk about psychedelics and what the word
Oh,
means.
go for it. You're the definition man.
So that comes from ancient Greek. Greek psyche means having to do with the mind, and delia or delic means to make manifest or to make clear or to reveal. So it's to reveal and to make clear of the mind, to get to know your mind more. So what I would really love to explore in this conversation is how psychedelics can be used responsibly to be able to reduce suffering, to open our minds, to help us heal, and to set aside and I mean really to look at this objectively, but still at the same time to set aside and to get out of the way any kind of nonsensical ideas that we have about the harm that they could cause, because it's really helpful to point out that President Nixon was president at the end of during the Vietnam War, and you're alluding to this. And during the Vietnam War, there were so many people that started to take psychedelics, and the classic psychedelics are, from what I understand, are psilocybin, which are magic
Mhm.
mushrooms, LSD, which is known as acid. There may be different forms of it, and DMT, which it's very similar to psilocybin, but you have a trip that, instead of the longest trip that you can have is usually LSD, and that can last up to 12 hours, would you say, or 10 hours,
I
or
don't know about LSD, but psilocybin can be anywhere between 5, 6, or 7 hours, depending on the dosage.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And then there is and then you okay, so and DMT can last just minutes, but
Yeah.
it okay. So there are healing properties that there have been ways that people have been able to rewire their mind, to open their mind to new possibilities. They have psychedelics have been proven to help with depression, to help with there's a 50% success rate in people getting over alcoholism in the 50s. The
Mhm.
person, Bill Wilson, so this is I'm going to let you talk more, but I'm just giving a little bit of context, is that Bill Wilson, who started Alcoholics Anonymous, actually he was sober, but he actually went on trips. I don't know if it was mescaline or what he did, but uh, I believe it was either psilocybin or LSD that helps people overcome their addiction. So it's helped people overcome addiction. It's helped people to overcome depression. It helps people get over habits of things like obsessive compulsive disorder, or habits that people have had in their minds, because it's helped to rewire these pathways. Yet we have this stigma of if there are these rumors that you hear about, if someone does a psychedelic for 5 or 6 times in their life, they're criminally insane, or people can think they can fly and can jump out of buildings and things like that. And so the government has criminalized it. And the ironic thing is probably the most harmful drug that anyone can take is alcohol. And what the pharmaceutical companies can't make money out of something that grows, naturally. So here we are with there are these healing properties, and there are these experiences that people have, positive or negative, that help people reveal things in their mind. Yet it's virtually misunderstood because with since the 60s, in the last 50 years, they had about 15 years of research papers, about 50 different research papers that came out about these healing properties of psychedelics. And then it was completely halted because it was criminalized. And so now we're having this renaissance, in this new renaissance where it's being decriminalized in places like Denver and Santa Cruz and Oregon, and people are having these breakthroughs and openings, and I am completely ignorant to the experiential properties of what can happen through these drugs. So I would love to just open it up and talk to you about it. So where would you like to go from here, and what do you think is important to talk about? Because I just wanted to give it some context.
So first off, my YouTube channel is dedicated to provide alternative resources for people, which we go into sweat lodges, we go into spiral circles, DMT, meditations and near death experiences, because I feel it's so important that people get more exposure to it and not be afraid. As a matter of fact, one of my friends who I had on my podcast for near death experience is one of those that, through the proper use and the proper guidance of psilocybin, he was able to get rid of 13 medications. 13
Wow.
medications. He's on my podcast. His name is Eric. And he had anxiety, depression, you name it. He pretty much had everything growing up. So it works, but it doesn't work where you hear these stories and then they go to like an ayahuasca ceremony and they come back and they're like, oh, I saw God. You may have that experience, but that is just the tip of the iceberg. It doesn't really work that way. And then you have the other end of the spectrum, which, because they weren't in the right mindset, because they were in fear, they have a bad trip, and then they go through what one would call psychosis, right? Because they saw too much and are completely out of control. They don't know how to, what they call, integrate that information. In other words, how to process that information. So I'll start with my experience. I'm a nerd geek. So when I started, my question initially was, there's got to be more to life than going to work, taking care of kids, coming home, and just making dinner, go to bed, and start all over. So in 2019, I started just not experimenting, but just reading all sorts of books, which led me to neuroscience, led me to quantum mechanics, quantum physics, which also led me to plant medicine, because that's part of the research in there. So by that time, I had already learned quite a bit about the medicinal uses of these plant medicines, including MDMA, peyote, San Pedro, all these other things. I started to do the meditations hardcore because I found benefit in the readings that I did or was doing. And so I just did everything. I did the meditations every single day, sometimes twice a day. I did journaling. I mean, I did it all. I was like the perfect student for a spirituality school. Um,
Can
back,
I ask you a question real quick?
yeah,
So the meditations and the journaling you did, was it suggested for you to do in conjunction with psychedelics, or is this just your own spiritual
my own
practice?
my own practice.
Okay.
I just learned about the psychedelics because it just came up in the readings that I have. When you're studying, neuroscience and biology and medicine, psychology, all of these things get mentioned per se, right? It wasn't like I picked up the book and I'm like, oh, magic mushrooms, you know?
Mhm.
So what does Smurfs really mean? Why were the houses mushrooms? I wasn't going in that direction. It was all for research. So I picked up the meditation and journaling just because of the other books I was reading. Dr. Joe Dispenza, Al Halrod or something like that. He like recovered from cancer twice through meditation and belief and blah blah blah. So fast forward, I'm deep into this. My life started crumbling. And I'm like, how is this possible? Like, it's supposed to uplift you. I'm meditating, I'm journaling, I'm doing everything, but my life just kept going out of control. In my opinion, it kept going under control. I couldn't understand what was happening. I couldn't understand what was inside me. But like a good student, I continued with the meditations and the journaling, not realizing what was happening. During the meditations and the journaling, what I know now is that I was becoming the observer. So I was seeing myself as
Ah,
an objective party, right? And this through meditation, this is what happens. But no one that I know was doing this. There weren't so many resources as there are now since post COVID. So I was doing this by myself and looking at, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Deepak Chopra, Eckhart Tolle, looking for answers to this. So I got more into the rabbit hole. Then I started looking at the mystery schools like the Rosicrucians and all that stuff. Um, so anywho's fast forward, my life crumbled. I was in the darkest space of my life at that point. And what I think what helped me in reading all of that and doing those practices beforehand was when most people's life fall apart, right? When you hit rock bottom, they usually say, if there is a God, why me? Right? That's the typical question that you ask. Why me? My question was, how did I do this to myself? How did I end up here? What can I do to never come to this place again? So I wasn't looking at a victim mentality, which was the previous work that I had done before. And I'm giving you this information because this is crucial when you go on these types of journeys, right? My question was, show me what I'm doing that keeps me that got me here in the first place. So I'm taking responsibility of my actions. I'm not blaming the other parties. I'm just saying, how did I get this far? How did I get myself in this mess? um so that's where I started expanding. I went to sweat lodges, sound baths, out in the desert, which were amazing. Different meetup groups where you just meet and meditate and get to know each other. And then, because I think I was ready for it, the medicine popped up, psilocybin. And I said, well, there must be a reason why I have this here, and I have nothing else to lose. And it was in the safe environment. This is held by a shaman. There's only a few other people. It's intimate, so they are there to walk you through the whole process. So they took questions. Is this your first time? Have you ever done it in the past? Blah blah blah. And I've done it in the past, but it was just to see the colors and the different dimensions, or I guess the geometric patterns, where you do just a little bit. But I
can
wanted
I
a deep.
inject a question,
Yeah.
Neyda? Because I want to just, for the people who are listening, because this is okay. So you had you went on this journey, on this spiritual journey, and you did a lot of meditating and journaling and things like that. Why did you go on the journey to begin with? Is it would be question number one.
To find out, there's got to be more to life than what I was doing. Going to work, coming home, feeding kids, going to bed, and starting this thing over and over. I did
Okay.
not recognize that there were issues within my life. And if I did recognize, I wasn't willing to see it for what they were. So I was in denial.
Okay, so you wanted to have better awareness to find how there could be more meaning to your life.
Yep.
And was was not suffering involved, or was it just more meaning that you were interested in? Okay.
Meaning, because I was in denial that I was suffering.
Oh, beautiful. Okay.
I didn't know I was suffering. I was like, "Do-do-do-do-do, this must be what a marriage is. This what means what life is. This is what a mommy is, you know? That's how I was rationalizing in my head to make me feel better.
Beautiful. So you had these mental constructs and you sensed that there was something greater that was out there. And so you followed your intuition. And then why did your life, because I want to get to the first trip that you did, but why did you think your life fell apart when you started doing spiritual and personal development work?
Great question. Because I was growing and becoming the observer, and now I was questioning everything that was going on in my life while nobody else around me was. So I'm separating myself from my surroundings, and this is why people feel very lonely during spiritual paths, because you do break away from the crowd. And I realized that I wasn't meshing with anybody. You know, the friends that would come over to the house, you know, I couldn't relate. I was questioning, like, why would you say that? Like, that's not nice. Or really, that makes you feel good about yourself? Like, I was creating all these questions in my head for conversations with them, and then I just started to separate myself from everything, where I became almost like a recluse in my own home, because I couldn't handle that.
So you started questioning things because the observer, as you called it, started to grow and you started to have greater awareness and you started to question things that you saw as normal, everyday, acceptable life. And that started to crumble because you saw that there was you were getting what you wanted. Was there's a greater meaning, but for you to get more of a handle on what really mattered, there had to be things, these constructs that you were living in, that had to crumble.
Yeah.
Okay, so beautiful. Thank you, Neyda. And so how did the psychedelics, I'm learning a lot from this. So so going on your first psychedelic trip, how did that mesh into you wanting to go further and finding meaning and to continue to have these constructs fall away? And why did you do the trip?
Well, I did the trip because I felt at that moment there was, remember, my question was, help me find out why I'm in this situation. What is it about me that got me to this place, right? Because I had a lot of guilt on top of me, a lot of heaviness and whatever. And through this is why it's so important to do it with people, with like you know, a group of people or somebody who's facilitating this to sit you down and talk to you about it. You know, it's the medicine is going to take you where you need to go to heal. You just sit back and just let it come all out. See what you got to see, feel what you got to feel. Don't try to control it. Just let it take its course, because the medicine works with your subconscious and it's going to show you what you need to work on at that time. And so I remember I'm like in the darkest of the dark of my life. Like I'm not clinically depressed, but I'm crying 24/7, feeling like ass. You know, it was hard. I felt like there was, after everything that I've read, what could go wrong? It's not addictive.
No.
It's not an addictive thing. It washes out of your system. It's not
Within
like,
about 5 to 6 hours, right? It
yeah,
actually
it's like
leaves.
done. And
Yeah.
like with DMT, you know, it's like out of your system within an hour. So
Yeah.
it's like it's clean. It's completely clean. So I'm like, okay, and I'm doing it with a group of people, and they're going to be there to help me if I need the help.
So
That's
that's
why I did
important
it. That's very
to have
important.
someone to, so you feel safe, someone to guide you. Is it important to have someone who is not tripping and taking the plant
Yeah,
medicine to be able to guide you?
yeah,
Okay.
especially when you're healing, especially when you've never done it, especially when you haven't done it that many times. You should always have a sitter.
Okay.
And one of the things too is one thing that I want to say is like your mindset is super important. if you are in a crappy mood, you're going to have a bad trip. If I went in complete surrender, I have nothing else to lose. I should hopefully I learned something from this. So my mindset was completely different. I was completely open and surrendering, and I'm like, again, I'm at the bottom of my life. you know, if this is really going to help me, this is the perfect mindset. I'm just going to go in and surrender. But if you're not in the mindset, if you're scared, or or if you have anxiety over it or whatever, do not take it, because chances are you're going to have a bad trip. And this is not for everybody. And I'll tell you why. I had a therapist and I had a support group. But think about this. Most therapists are not covered by your insurance, right? They're out of network. Then how much do you pay? 175, 150 per hour, and you get to see them once a week, once every 2 weeks. And then you end up asking the same questions over and over. When you take a plant medicine, it cuts straight to the core,
Whoa.
straight to the core, right? Now you can use what you get from the plant medicine and then supplement it with your therapist. Better yet, there are integration circles everywhere. There's one in Santa Barbara that's phenomenal, who is also on my podcast, where you can get together after your journeys and discuss your journeys. And there are other people who are also journeyers, is that a word? Journeyers, to help you with what you saw, what you felt, so you don't feel alone. So you have that support group. So it's in addition to therapy, but this cuts straight to the core. So if you're ready for like balls to the wall healing, then the plant medicine is the way to go, with the proper mindset and the proper structure, the proper environment.
Wow. Thank you for sharing all that. Okay, so it's important to let go.
Yep.
It's important to be in a state of relaxation, surrender, not fighting the experience when you're going into it. And it sounds like you could have a pleasurable or a hellish experience, just like life. It mirrors life.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so we hear these connotations about a quote bad trip, but a lot of the times it's because is it because things are coming up that need to come up from the surface that have been repressed? Tell
Yeah.
me more about what comes up and what needs to be dealt with, and why it's cutting to the core. Could you say more about that?
So from a general standpoint, because I went in with other people who went to healing, so you start feeling all these emotions erupting. So you'll have tons of crying, and then you'll start talking, you'll start having these full-blown conversations. You might start remembering things from your past, or things might come up that you suppressed from the past, right? So a lot of people go through their life suppressing bad memories because it was so bad that they don't want to think about it again. Well, guess what? That's spiritual bypassing. So with the plant medicine, it's going to make you go back to those feelings, so you can address to say, hey, you're still feeling this way because you had this traumatic event in your life. You need to process it. You need to walk through it. You need to feel it again, and acknowledge that it happened, and then forgive it. Forgive yourself, move forward in life. So it's the pathway, or the gateway to your recovery from those things you may not know you had, those suppressed emotions.
Could you say
Um,
those steps that you said again? When you acknowledge, could you say that again? Because I think
oh
that's
gosh,
important.
let me see. You acknowledge, you accept it, you process it, and then you move on.
So processing it means feeling it fully, or what is that what that means?
Yeah, and being okay with it. And I think, did I say forgiveness? Forgiveness was the other part. Did I say forgiveness?
Well, yeah, you didn't, but thank you for adding that. Yeah.
Yeah, forgiving is very key. So, and it's okay. It's okay to feel those emotions. And that's the first step for healing, is acknowledging that it happened and then accepting that it happened.
Well, this is really a beautiful thing that you're educating us on, Nada, because this is an example of how psychedelics are used responsibly
Mhm.
and for growth. And it's also important. The message I'm getting is this is not for the faint of heart. This is not necessarily for people who aren't willing to do the work, would you say? Because it takes work. It takes facing it. It takes, in a way, being a warrior. You have to face and be willing to deal with whatever the medicine is showing you. Um, so let me think of where we can go with
Well,
this
well, you're
now.
thinking about that. I want to make a very like kind of like a comparison. When people that go to an ayahuasca retreat for 7 days, let's say in Costa Rica, right? And then you have people that go to a Dr. Joe Dispenza retreat that have the same outcomes, right? But different methodologies. You have a ayahuasca retreat which deals with the ayahuasca, but Dr. Joe Dispenza's retreat is straight up meditation and breath work. And you're starting at 4 in the morning and you're working till nighttime, and they both have the same impact. You come out feeling blissful and oneness, and sometimes miraculously you are healed from whatever, right? When you step away from those experiences, because those are very huge, impactful experiences, I think psilocybin is very uh steps, like mini steps, right? Whereas when you're doing an ayahuasca or something as hardcore as that retreat, then you're in it. I mean, you have no choice. You're just like in it big time. It's a different level. When people step out of there, they forget. When they go back into the regular life, they forget what they've learned. And remember, we've been programmed with these things in our head. And you started off in the very beginning of this Instagram live saying that it's an illusion. And after, when you start going back into your day-to-day life, you start believing in that illusion again. So you forgot everything that you learned in the retreats, either which one you picked, right? So it's very important that what you get out of it, you continue. And it's a nonstop. I want to say it's a nonstop battle, but eventually you will win the war with enough practice, and it gets easier and easier and easier. But it's a constant battle dealing with the external factors that we have no choice but to work in, and live in, right? So you're going to have those people that are going to trigger you. You're going to have the work that's going to trigger you. Everything's going to trigger you, and it's a constant work. So it's not go in for this hero's journey and it's going to solve all your problems. No, for the most part, it's going to expose you to continuously work on your product, on your problems, and then maybe the next time you take it again, it's going to show you another side of that. So you keep on learning and growing every time. Every experience, every journey is scales up. So you get here, you get this information. You don't do it for a year or 6 months or whatever. You do another journey, and you have a different level, another part of you that needs to be worked on.
Beautiful. So you're talking about integrating. You have the experience from the plant medicine. You have a trip or journey or whatever we want to call it, and then you go into your life. And tell me a little bit more about how you have that experience. And see that when you go back and do another journey, things they're layers, it sounds
Mhm.
like, and peeling of an onion. But how do you integrate your experience into your daily life? Because it sounds like that's kind of part of what you're talking about.
So what the plant medicine does is, even though, let's say that you just took it like a week ago, the body remembers that experience because now the subconscious has been kind of woken up, right? So you're going to have that experience like, oh, well, I remember. You might be more sensitive. You might be more hypersensitive to, people, to just going outside, because now you're just different. You come out a different person every little bit. And then you have to, it doesn't force you, but the point of it is to look inwardly and ask, why am I getting upset just going outside to the market? Like, it's okay. Like, I do this all the time, right? So you start being more aware, and that's what happens after these things. You start getting more sensitive to your surroundings, which hopefully you become more aware and start asking, why am I feeling triggered? Why am I getting upset? Why did my friend just make me upset? Like, she didn't say anything wrong. There you go. You're starting the healing process because you're now questioning why you feel a certain way because it's your perception.
Mm, okay. So you have this perception, you question it, and you discard things that are not useful, or how would you describe the letting go or the processing through when you're integrating it into your life?
It's hard to discard, and that's what the challenge is. That's what the game is. You gotta learn what concepts, what perceptions you want to keep and which ones you want to get rid of. And this is where it becomes lonely because you start saying, you know what, like I'm realizing that my friend and I have nothing in common anymore. You
Mm,
start seeing that separation and you're like, is it okay? I mean, should the more you question yourself and why you feel a certain way, the more you start to have better discernment of your friends, family, and work situation.
yeah.
And now you're not going to resonate with people. Now you're going to be like, I think I need a break from you, or I'll hang out with you from a distance, only show up when we have to, that once a month thing or whatever. But you start really separating, and people, the other side feels like, you're being a jerk and like, ignoring them, and then you're feeling guilty because you're like, I just don't have anything in common, like I don't agree with you, or I don't feel something, I feel something is off between us. And that's when you start parting ways, and it's a beautiful thing because you start learning how to not be codependent. You start learning to be in your power. You start learning to have more confidence in yourself, and that's where it all, oh, did I do that?
I don't know, but I'm feeling those hearts. I'm grateful for everything you're sharing. And, and by the way, if anybody has any questions, I do have a friend that's on right now who is going to be doing her first journey. So if you have any questions, chime in.
I want to do it.
So can I do it?
Yeah,
No.
maybe it's you because you started
Oh,
it.
there
There
you
you
go. I did
go.
it too. So how does a retreat, because you brought up a Joe Dispenza retreat, and then you talk about going on a plant medicine journey, how do they compare? How do they contrast? And because we're talking, these are both methods: going to a retreat and journaling, the kind of things that you're talking about, meditating, and then going on a journey with plant medicine. How do these compare, and how are they
So
different?
I have not been to a Dr. Joe Dispenza retreat. It's on my bucket list, but I have seen, and I have a friend who goes to every single one of them. Like I kid you not, like that's her jam. Difference is of when you're using a plant medicine, it's kind of like the shortcut, right? And the thing with the shortcut is that everything that you learn from a whatever Dr. Joe Dispenza retreat, you get it within yourself. So you can have your own DMT trip because we have DMT naturally in our system. We experience DMT twice, when we come out of the womb and when we die, which is the white light, which is the near death experience that people talk about. DMT opens up the portal. I'm going to call it portal because I'm a nerd, into the other dimensions. So we naturally have DMT. So what you learn from Dr. Joe Dispenza is to how to naturally tap into that with you without having to go into, baby steps with the cost of like, mushroom ceremony or what have you. So it's very different. I would love to go to a Dr. Joe Dispenza because you learn how to do it naturally and through your own work, through your own dedication, you get all the benefits of the plant medicines. Now, what the plant medicines do though is they add the extra graphics, right? So you have the extra animation, you have the visual effects, which could be really cool too. Like that's pretty cool. And if you add music to it, which Dr. Joe Dispenza does too, but when you add music to any psychedelic, it enhances the experience. So it's really, what do you prefer? So here's, if you can afford to go to Dr. Joe Dispenza and you're going to be there with like thousands of people, do it because you learn how to do it the natural way, the way our bodies were meant to do it. If you don't and you need the immediate healing now, then definitely do an integration circle, a mushroom ceremony.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. So tell us about the pleasant experiences, and there's we're getting to know our mind more fully, and we're revealing our things that need to be brought to our awareness. But tell me about the pleasant experiences that can be had and how they can be pragmatic, how they can be helpful in your daily life.
So depending on the plant medicine, so if you're using something like psilocybin and DMT, they're more intrinsic medicines versus you do something like MDMA, which is also known as Molly or ecstasy, and those are extrinsic, completely different experiences. When you do like an MDMA journey, you just feel love. It is the most insane amount of love that you can ever feel. Like, oh, everyone is kumbaya. You know, you love the planet, you love you. It's I can't even explain to you how that bliss feels. But that's what we're meant to feel. That's how I realized like I want to feel like that forever, right? But it's obviously tough. And also when you're dealing with that type of plant medicine, you get the feels. So that can be kind of weird for people because everything you touch just has like an exaggerated sensation. So in some ceremonies, you see people bring like furry pillows or feathers or something like that because it enhances the sensory for touch. When you do the psilocybin, ayahuasca, peyote, whatever's is more intrinsic. What you get out of that, you can still feel bliss, but it's a different bliss. It's a more of very calming. You may have a giggle fit where you just start laughing hysterically for like 30 minutes or whatever, not knowing. And it's because you needed that laughter because maybe you haven't laughed in a long time. So that's therapeutic. So you start laughing. Or if you have music, you start singing. Or as the medicine starts to wear off, you start interacting with other people, and that becomes just very pleasurable because you guys can have like this really um intense conversation if the other person is okay to do that. So it's really cool because it just opens up vulnerability and it becomes a very soft side of you, and it's just very calming where you're like, oh my God, that feels like whatever it was, it's out now. Whatever it was, it's now. You just feel that relief that it just a whole burden had just come off of you. So that is very pleasant. And again, you'll have the hallucinogens, with the colors and the shapes and stuff like that. But a good hero's journey will take you into the depths of your soul. That you should see only like the patterns in the very beginning or maybe towards the very end. It's very cool.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's important, thank you. And I think it's important to bring up that these plant medicines, they don't completely shut off, but they slow down the default mode network, and it's the way that we talk to ourselves. And so much of the way that we talk, and I know you know this, so much of the way that we talk to ourselves is negative. So much of the way we talk to ourselves is judgmental toward other people. So when that veil is lifted, then we can feel more love, or our senses are heightened depending on what we're taking. Whether, I love the way you said it was extrinsic or intrinsic. Whereas something like, tell me if I'm right about this, psilocybin, LSD, DMT, that's more intrinsic, you said,
Hmm.
and something like Molly. And this is really interesting because well, MDMA, which is also, it was along with ecstasy and Molly, it was called empathy, I learned.
Oh, really?
Isn't that
Makes perfect
interesting?
sense. That makes perfect sense.
Because that veil lifts that is keeping us in judgment, that default mode network that keeps us feeling separate. So a lot of what we do, and this is, I wanted to bring this back full circle because I don't have experience with this, but I do have experience with having mystical experiences in meditation, because what can happen when you're on a long meditation retreat or you're in a state of deep surrender is that default mode network can slow way down, and that sense of me, that sense of self can slow way down, and we can experience unity, which could be that the positive side of plant medicine, where it's like, oh, that the tree is just as alive as I am, and that what is inside of me is also what makes up this other person. So therefore, there's no other. It's preposterous for me to do anything but love that other person, and there can be openings of experiencing yourself as love and other people as love. So these things can happen outside of taking these medicines. I'm calling them medicines and not drugs because they're very different from taking something like cocaine or
Yeah.
methamphetamine. And I really want to bring a respect that you're bringing to this, but as you said, it can be a shortcut. And what I've heard people talk about, like Sam Harris, he said he's a neuroscientist, and he talked about how he would have never been interested in meditation. Sorry, not medication, meditation, or the experience of consciousness and learning who he was, if he hadn't had that first experience with, in his case, MDMA, and then he, did some other medicines as well, because it's hard for some people to go straight there. So it opens up the veil for you to experience things. So as you said, it's a shortcut. It can be a shortcut to finding out what's blocking you and finding out, would you say, the nature of reality, those two things. That's what I hear you saying. Tell me more about what it
Okay, so
reveals.
this is the cool part. Will everybody experience a metaphysical experience? It depends on the person, depends on how much healing, depends on how much work they've done. What I do want to touch base is what you mentioned before, was the what we talk about during, as it's dwindling down, the plant medicine is coming down. You are in a state of theta this whole time. When you're in a state of theta, that's when all the thoughts are impressionable. Is that correct? Impressionable? Yeah,
Hmm.
I say it right. My ESL kicked in. I'm like, wait, is that the word? So, anyways, so that's when all your thoughts start to really get stuck into the subconscious. And that's the beautiful thing. And whether you're meditation or you're doing plant medicine, you are in a theta state. So you're right above delta, where you're just like snoring asleep. That is the time, and that's where they tell you the best times to meditate are like between 3 and 5 in the morning, or like late at night, right before bed, because you are fully relaxed. And that's when those thoughts can really dig in. So the I ams, I am brave, I am worthy, I am enough, blah, 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 all those stuff. That's when it really sticks. That's why it's important for these experiences, because you're in a perpetual state of theta. Now, the metaphysical side, I love this part, because I experienced the metaphysical prior to the plant medicine. As a matter of fact, that's when my psychic abilities came in, was prior to the plant medicine. But now with the experience of the plant medicine, just like you said, it stays in the body. It stays in the body in the form of remembering what the experience is, and it just opened up brand new neural pathways in your brain. So that junk DNA that they say that we have, that 90% junk DNA, starts to activate to all these metaphysical experiences. I know. Am I getting too nerdy? Sorry.
No, you're not. This is fascinating. The face I made was just wow. No, no, no. So say a little bit more about I wish we could talk another hour about this, but um, say a little bit more about the neural pathways and how they change, and your experience and understanding of
Okay.
that.
So one of the reasons why people do microdosing is not because mushrooms is addictive. It is not addictive whatsoever. The thing is that it has been scientifically proven, years and years of research. You can look it up, you can do whatever, that the magic mushroom, the psilocybin, opens up additional neural pathways. So what does that do? it allows you to learn new things. It allows you to remember things. For those of you that have, fog brain or, mommy brain or whatever, it starts reinitiate, starts creating all these neural pathways and establishing brand new connections, which in essence means that your brain is now growing to a maximum or more capacity. In other words, you have all this potentiality and we're only right here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the plant medicine starts opening up the rest of the potentiality that you have around you. So that's why it's to me it's so amazing, because you feel smarter. You're like like you just want to do more things. You just want to learn more things. It just opens up the avenue for more information, for more growth within yourself. You become addicted to yourself. You become addicted to your own growth, which is a beautiful thing, because we're always used to helping everyone else. Or maybe you're self-centered, so it's only about you, but in the more materialistic and egotistic way. This is completely different. You start experiencing and doing things more out of because you feel like it's the right thing to do, and it makes you feel good. It's the inner knowing and the inner fulfillment. There we go, fulfillment.
Mm, mm. So yeah, I have heard of people losing their fear of death when people at end of life when they're doing these medicines. I have heard people have an experience of seeing how precious life is and how important it is to take in every moment. It sounds like these you see your minds more clearly. You see things that have been repressed. You see. It slows down your mind so you can see things more clearly on the outside as well. But would you say that these medicines or these psychedelics that you take help? Would would you say that they help you? Well, let me turn it into a question and ask you this: as we're really wrapping this up, how would you say that it expands your mind, and how is it? Why would you recommend that someone takes this if they're interested in it?
So when we're talking about expanding the mind, what, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm thinking is you've done the initial work for the healing process and now you're going into the metaphysical, or are you talking about like the science behind how it expands your mind?
Knowing your mind more clearly so you can grow as a person and be a better person, someone who enjoys life more, and someone who is happier. I mean, isn't that what we're all looking for?
Okay, so that's great, because that's what by nature the plant medicine is. It's supposed to open up the empathy levels. So by a byproduct of this of the plant medicine is you will naturally start to go there without even you having to focus on it. It just naturally happens. And then people will comment on you like, "Oh, wow, that was nice of you," or, "Oh, I didn't see it that way," or because again, remember there's two things. The plant medicine is supposed to create, it's going to open up your heart, because you're forgiving, you're accepting, and you're allowing. So by nature, and Eckhart Tolle talks about this the whole time, you're going to become a different person. You're evolving into what you were meant to be. If you want to go a little bit deeper, you go into Christ consciousness and you start following, whatever the Course of Miracles book says. So you start growing in that way. But when you're also opening up all these neuro pathways, and this is why Steve Jobs took LSD, was because he knew this would happen, and he got all these creative ideas. Now, for Steve Jobs, let me step back a bit. His brain was already wired to think in an inventor's way, right? So that's
Mhm.
how the plant medicine affected him. I'm not an inventor, but now I'm teaching myself music. I'm teaching myself piano and guitar, right? That's how my neural pathways opened up. I've also seen how there's a possibility of trusting the universe, God, whatever you choose, you prefer, into allowing things to come to you, which is manifestation, or somebody may call law of attraction, or somebody may call the law of assumption, right? That's how you know that you're growing. And those are the benefits of whether you take a psychedelic or whether you take, a retreat that focuses on how you can pull that out of you yourself without the use of plant medicine.
Yeah. Is there a deeper, and we'll wrap this up, but is there a deeper experience of your connection to everything and everyone else when you're talking about manifestation? That's what that made me think of.
Absolutely, because my psychic abilities have enhanced, as you know.
Yeah.
So, I am now of service to others in very different ways than I would have been in formerly 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Of service to others for other, and so I am way deeper if I allow myself to connect with an individual energetically and help them energetically in what they're doing. And each person's going to have their own gifts that come up and how they're going to be of service. So, but that's when the fun comes in, because on these journeys I've died like 3 times, and um, I loved every single instance of it because it was an amazing, um, I guess, death experience per se. I mean, you don't die in the physicality. It's very hard. It's very hard to explain because it's almost like an astral projection type of situation. But anywho's, you get more connected because you can travel and see things. You can ask questions and get answers right on the fly, you know. And that's one important thing, is if you're already kind of like advanced or whatever, it's important for you to have a sitter. They call them sitter, somebody who's there, who's sober, who can take notes, because it can be a lot of what they call downloads. And all download means is just exactly like you use a computer, tons of information coming down, which you may not remember. And so somebody might help be there on the sidelines just taking notes for you. It's amazing the type of information. It kind of goes with asking, you shall receive. That's really what it comes down to. You ask the question and you're going to get a huge brain dump.
Yeah, yeah. So this takes us out of our conventional mind, and if people who are listening who haven't uh, tried this before, there may be some things that sound a little bit, like out there, but it's because this is an experience that you have that takes you out of which is, to bring this full circle, what you wanted, which is such a beautiful thing, was to find out what is beyond, what really matters. And so it sounds like through your journey, and it's not just through plant medicine, but through your spiritual journey, there's these constructs have crumbled, and you have had deeper, more expansive experiences of life, and it continues to grow. And this is really your journey that you're on, is to find out what's grander than what takes place in your normal everyday perception. I mean, that's kind of what I've taken from it. Is there, how would you, I want to ask, the final question I'm going to ask is how people can get in touch with you, but what final thoughts would you have for someone who's interested in doing plant medicine? Yes, we know that there are places where it's criminalized and places where you can do it legally. We'll stay out of that, but how would you, what would you recommend? What final thoughts would you have for people?
You can look at my podcast on YouTube at Guided Counsel. And you'll see there's a playlist for alternative journeys. I think that's what the playlist is called. And so I touch on a few different things with information, but always do your research. At the end of the day, do your own research, because your experience is going to be different from mine. And I'm not trying to sell plant
No.
medicine at all. Like, I'm not trying to say it's the gift of God. Oh, no, no, no. This can also crumble you if you're not ready for it. So be very, very, plant medicine, you said at the very beginning, has to be respected. It is part of nature, and it was on this planet for a reason. It's not for shits and giggles. So do your research. Don't take my word for it. Read up on it. look at my podcast and see the people that, because it may not be psilocybin, it may be a sweat lodge, it may be a spiral circle that would be for you, or a sound bath would be better for you. There's so
Mm.
many options out there that it's not just the plant medicine. It's that's just the stuff that I've experienced and the ones that resonated with me.
Well, this has been badass. Thank you
Yeah.
for this, Neyda. Yeah, yeah. So they can get in touch with you at Guided Counsel. Any other place where people can get in touch with you, or is that the best place?
That's the best place. That's the my handle for Instagram and Facebook, which I haven't done much on it because I've been procrastinating. That's another thing I need to work on. Maybe another journey as my I try to figure out what this fear is of putting myself out there. But